Greetings, this is Infernocanuck, Advisor to Diplomacy. You may call me Lord and Master Infernocanuck, Your Highness to be, or hey you behind the bushes. I don't really mind which. Now this is my report for King Squeeth, in addition to all fellow advisors. Of course, as the Advisor of Diplomacy, I have 3 responsibilities. I determine who we go to war with, whom we ally with, and which nobles are brought into the fold of Gondor. So, for the first half, let's deal with diplomacy. Let's open up the diplomacy tab here. Of course, it should be called the Inferno tab, the Infernocanuck tab, since it is my realm. In fact, let's fix that right now. There we are, much better. Now, as we can see, we are allies with Rohan. The Northmen are in perfect relations with us, and they have a fine reputation. We already have trade rights and military access with them. We should try to cultivate this relationship as much as possible. Now our enemies, of course, are the dark and evil Mordor. Completely abysmal relations with a mixed reputation, but I'm sure they will slaughter enough men to begin with. And of course we also are at war with the Harad. Finally, the unruly bandits, whom none can actually relate to, can actually stop fighting. They are bandits after all, so we just won't count them as far as factions go. Now, as far as enemies go, Mordor is, of course, along this direction. Where exactly they are, we have no idea. In fact, if we peruse through this entire map, you can see that we are in the dark. This needs to be remedied as soon as possible. Now, I'm not too sure who is in charge of building watchtowers, but allow me to suggest this. We need to build possibly 2 watchtowers per turn, sending out nobles to oversee their construction. Watchtowers only cost 200 gold each, therefore it is a budget of simply 400 gold a turn, which I'm certain if we levy enough taxes and convince our good and fine and, may I say, quite handsome treasurer to allow us that sort of allotment. Priorities for such watchtowers should of course be near Osgiliath, also along the borders of this river. We need to see exactly ship movements and if there's any movements along the enemy border. Finally, once those are done, we should also try to build watchtowers along roads, especially major trading sites. Therefore, we can keep an eye on bandits. And our final priority will be creating watchtowers along the rear, the far west of our kingdom. Now, once that is alleviated, we also need to find out where all the other factions are. Now, we could send a diplomat to Mordor, but of course he would come back without his head and very little information. So instead, I suggest sending our spy. This is up to the discretion of our advisor of agents, of course, but my suggestion to him is to start sending a spy past Osgiliath and at least try to find the borders of Mordor to see how close we are to war with them. Now, as far as anticipating attack between Mordor and the Harad, I always believe that ships sail faster than troops. Therefore, the Harad are more likely to strike first if they do indeed have such a large navy as one assumes, as they are known to have. Therefore, I would expect some sort of attack along our southern reaches by Linhir, or perhaps Dol Amroth. Therefore, we can probably spend the next 10 turns not worrying about Mordor per se, but instead building up resources, which I will leave to the fine handling of our military advisors. Now, on to our allies. We, as I mentioned before, need to find out exactly where our allies are. If I just blustered upon this map, not knowing where Rohan is, how are we supposed to support her? How are we supposed to support our fine and good allies? I suggest, therefore, that we recruit one diplomat between the turns 1 and 5, and another diplomat between the turns 6 and 10. The first diplomat should send towards where we believe Rohan is, and we negotiate for map information. Since they are our allies, we can also offer them our map information as compensation. Then that diplomat should start heading towards the northeast, perhaps coming in contact with Dale and perhaps even the dwarves. There we should try to garner map information from them as well. Now, once we know where they are and where their relative power may be, then we can talk about alliances or possible support, but that will wait until after the 10th turn at the least. So we won't get too far into that. Now, the diplomat that I suggest is hired between turn 6 and 10 should go to the northwest and meet with other fellowships and try to get as much map information as possible. Now, it is very risky to offer our own map information to neutral factions, because once they know where all our stuff is, then they might start getting in their heads that taking it, maybe just taking a little bit here and there, and perhaps backstabbing us would be in their prerogative. Therefore, I suggest purchasing map information. Of course, that is, the actual monies is dependent on our wise treasurer, but a good rule of thumb, I would imagine, is paying somewhere between 500 and 1,000 gold for some map information. Of course, stumbling upon factions will not happen every turn, so therefore I believe this can be budgeted properly. As for my final task, which is determining whom shall go into our great realm, which nobles shall be recruited, let us take a look at our nobles. We have ourselves 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10 settlements, 10 large cities, and we have ourselves 11 family members, or great generals, to be more specific. Now, great generals, like Lord Boromir here, are quite expensive. Allow me to take him out so we may look at his bodyguard. His bodyguard was 154 upkeep, and that, of course, could be better spent on another unit, perhaps. So therefore, we should not just recruit any lord that takes a fancy, or any lord that wants to be adopted willy-nilly. Since we have more than enough governors to actually govern all of our settlements, I suggest we only recruit a interested lord if they have at least over 4 command, because one cannot have any better commanders, and if they have at a minimum 5 loyalty. We definitely do not need any disloyal dogs. Now, that is very good for a command standpoint. Now, a very good governor may also show up, and that is an individual who has great obedience, because the more obedient they are, apparently the better they are at managing money. Don't ask me the difference. Goodness knows I am more than obedient to King Squee, as I've shown with my great gifts of cake and knives and pit traps and that sort of thing. Suffice to say, if we get some sort of family member that has, once again, a minimum of 5 loyalty, perhaps a low command, but a very high obedience, say 6 or higher. No, let's not say 6 or higher. We need someone to really wow us, to really show us everything they have. So if they have 7 obedience, then they should also be accepted into our folds and be given the governance of a very large settlement. There you are. There are my suggestions to our fellow advisors and of course Lord Squee for the first 10 turns. If you have any questions, don't be afraid to ask either in the comments section below or perhaps at the forums.